Very happy to see everybody out tonight for resuming our evening programs, which are always obviously energizing and fun, and you get to meet people and see people you haven't seen for a while. So welcome, and we will go ahead and get started. My name's Mava, and I'm president of Lane County Audubon Society. So we have a lot of familiar faces and also new faces. We have a table in the back. If you've not been here before or you want to learn more about our group, you can ask questions or get brochures and find out what's going on. You can sign up for free copies of our newsletter for 3 months. We also send out an electronic copy, which we really find interesting. One thing I want to mention about the electronic copy is it is in beautiful color. If you get the paper copy, it's sort of monotone. It looks great. It's the same product, but because the newsletter online is just full color and it's magnificent with all the bird photos and everything. So check that out if you have not looked for that before. I think we have a couple people that are going to make announcements before we get started. Debbie, are you going to speak for a moment? This is Debbie Schlenoff, our conservation chair. Oh, wait, Debbie, wait. Zoom. We have a Zoom audience.
I can't resist because I haven't done show and tell since like 3rd grade or something. So I'm very happy to be able to do this. This is a sample of bird safe glass. And there are ordinances in cities across the country that are trying to get their communities to use bird safe glass in new buildings and new development. Now, if you already have windows, and I think most of us do, there's lots of fixes if birds are crashing into your windows, and you can find those fixes on our website. But check this out. So pretty nice looking windows. I don't know if you're all going to be able to see this. This is what the birds. So there's a UV pattern that's built into the glass, and birds see UV, so they're seeing this striping pattern and they don't crash into the glass. So we're really trying to spread the word about this. I do want to mention that it is peak migration season, so please do what you can to protect the birds as they fly over our skies. That means turning off unnecessary lighting, shielding your lights, using motion sensors, closing your curtains, and if you get bird strikes on your window, using some kind of covering that's effective so that the birds can see that there's glass. Birds don't see glass. They try and fly right through and they crash into it. So let's do what we can to help them see the glass and keep those migrations as safe as possible. So have fun looking at the migrating birds. Thank you, guys.
Are you going to give us a little summary, or can you come up here, please? That's okay. It's good for people to know who you are because you do such wonderful work for us.
Okay, thank you. My name is Barb Pope, and I've been working with kids in the schools for the last about 10 years. And anyway, we're always looking for volunteers, for people that are interested in helping us bring information about birds to kids, hopefully to make new ornithologists. And so if you're interested, please see me tonight, and I will put you on our list. We're going to get organized sometime here in October and start going into classrooms, bringing that love of birds to the kids.
Thank you, Barb. So just by way of explanation, Barb is the lead of the group called Audubon in the Schools, and we use bird specimens and feathers that we have a collection of, and we take them into the classrooms, and then they teach them drawing techniques using those bird specimens and feathers for the kids to learn how to draw. So it's kind of a combo of learning a bit of science and about bird biology and habitat and ecosystems, things like that. But then also drawing, which, you know, they don't teach that in schools anymore. And we kind of feel like that's a missing piece for our children, so.
And the binoculars, which Audubon provided for us.
Right, we purchased several, like about
30.
Yeah. Yeah, 32 sets of kids binoculars, and then they set up beginning birding classes. They have little models that they hang out in the schoolyard and stuff, so they have something to target looking at those little bird models and learning how to use the binoculars. So that program is doing wonderful work. If anybody's interested, there's a couple of other people here tonight that are also participants in that. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Dennis Arndt, and I try to organize these programs for you. And so I want to tell you a little bit about what's coming up. In October, we're going to have a program with Ram Papish. He's been with us. So he did a program actually just this last winter about his art. And many of you know him already. I think this will be his 6th or 7th program with the Lane County Audubon Society. This time he's going to be coming with his partner in travels, Roy Lowe. Some of you may know Roy Lowe. Roy is a retired U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service person. He was with them for 37 years. He's a fantastic photographer, as is Ram. They're both great storytellers, and they have this program they're calling Pet Peeving Our Way Through Paradise. And it's going to be about Brazil's Atlantic rainforest and the Pantanal. So it's one you don't want to miss. That'll be 1 month from now, and probably in the other room, not this one. Then also coming up pretty soon, we're having a very special Zoom-only meeting. This will be something you'll have to, get your computers out, but I'm real excited about this. We have Dorian Anderson, who wrote the book called Birding Under the Influence. I'll tell you a little bit about that. He's an amazing person, just in all the things that he's done. He's right now just got back from Namibia, where he is a tour guide and leads a lot of tours in Africa and other places. He's in the San Francisco area, and so he'll be Zooming his program from there. This will be on Monday, the 30th at 7 o'clock. The connection, the link, it will be on the Lane County Audubon Society website if you don't already have it. Now, his book, I have it here in my hand. I can't get it. Here it is. This is his book, Birding Under the Influence. And it's an odd title, because what he has done is he's kind of commingled two stories. One is about his amazing big year birding in the United States on a bicycle. He leaves Boston, Massachusetts in January 1st in a snowstorm and starts bicycling south. And he ends up in Oregon. He comes to Oregon, comes through Colorado, everything. It's just an amazing trip. Well, that in itself is a great story. But the reason there is that title about birding under the influence is because he was a serious addict, and he talks about his recovery and how he started out as an addict, started out with alcohol, went into all kinds of other drugs. He graduated summa cum laude from Stanford while totally blitzed the whole time he was there. He goes on to graduate school, continues his addiction. And anyway, it's an amazing story. It'll be fun to listen to him and hear him tell his story on Monday, the 30th, 7 o'clock. So try and do that. This coming Monday, 6 days from now. Okay. Okay. Now, after all that, we also have a fantastic event tonight. Our speaker tonight is a former teacher. He's also a musician, plays the guitar. He's also a very good photographer, and he travels all over and puts all of this stuff together. One of the things that's amazing is that he's able to take these skills of his and make them all commingle on the computer and produce an amazing program for us tonight. He's going to take us to Colombia, Northern Colombia and Medellin. And I'm just really looking forward to this. So please, let's give a nice warm welcome to Forest Tomlinson.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to put my bow tie on. I'm all buttoned up, so it gets closer.
You want me to put it on?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. All right, I'm officially on the clock. Turn on the microphone. There we go. Can you hear me out there?
Yes.
All right. Well, here we go. Thank you, Dennis. And let's see, I got to get my little slide mover here and test out my laser pointer. All right, well, welcome here tonight. My presentation is going to be on Northern Colombia, which I call a Wonderland of Endemics. And, whoops. I'd like to thank the Lane County Audubon Society for inviting me here tonight, and especially Dennis. And I would like to direct your attention to the website because all those great presentations that Dennis is talking about, you can find them and you can view them. If you've missed them in the past, you can catch up on them at Lane County Audubon Society's website. But most of all, thank you for coming tonight. Thanks to the audience here. Without you guys, these things definitely wouldn't be taking place. And so it's good to see all you guys here tonight, and I hope I won't disappoint you. Okay, so my presentation tonight is on Colombia, obviously. And why Colombia? What's so great about it? I plan to tell you about that. How did I go about preparing and planning for this trip? And best of all, where did we go and what did we see? But before we get started, we're going to play a little trivia, Colombia style, with special guest Taylor Swift. Just kidding, she's still in Kansas City. So we are gonna play a little trivia pursuit here. True or false? Colombia is the northernmost country in South America. Raise your hand if you think that's true. Okay, and raise your hand if you think it's false. Okay, the answer is, it's true. The northern part of Colombia, whoops, hopefully this goes back. Oh, you stole the next question. Okay, so the northern tip of Colombia here, and this shows how nervous I am. If you go on a westerly track, this is Nicaragua here. All right, so it's actually north of Costa Rica and north of Panama. And this little island right here is San Andres, and that belongs to Colombia as well. So congratulations to those who raised their hand on, said that it was true. Okay, onward. Colombia is bordered by 5 countries. Can we get 5 people to name at least one? So one at a time, raise your hand. Venezuela is right. Helen. Oh, way in the back. Shout it out. No, Panama, Ecuador, Brazil. Okay, and Peru. We've got them all. So you can see that Colombia is surrounded by both oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific, and Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Venezuela, and to the north, Panama. So congratulations, collect your prize on the way out the door. Okay, so now, why Colombia? Why did we choose Colombia? What's so great about it? Well, to begin with, the people and the culture are amazing. It's so diverse there. Up in the north where we were, it has a strong Caribbean influence. And as you go south into Medellin, it's more of a Spanish and indigenous influence. And always the dogs are so interesting. Dogs in Central and South America are different than dogs here. I don't think there's such a thing as a stray dog in Central or South America. They just run all around town. I don't know if they belong to anybody, but they seem real healthy and people seem to look out for them and people just get along really well. You can see right here, people, don't pay much attention. They just walk around them. But the flora and the fauna, that's the main reason that what attracted me. And all of these photographs you're going to see up close and personal tonight, I promise. Okay, so you kind of get why we're talking about Colombia, but why the Santa Marta Mountains? What's so special about that? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's very special. It has this Colón Peak and Boulevard Peak are about the same size, and they're the highest mountain range, coastal mountain range in the world, and the highest peaks in Colombia. You have to go more than 1,500 miles to the south in Ecuador to find a peak that's higher than these. Let's see. And so this is the second highest coastal mountain range in the world. And just 26 miles from the coast, from the summit of that mountain, which is 19,000 feet, to the coast is only 26 miles, which makes it the fifth most prominent peak in the world. But what makes it really special bird-wise is there's 300, and out of the 340 endemic species found in Colombia, 44 are found here. And why? Well, if you look at the topography of this, you can see that there's a little kind of like an ecosystem right in this area right here. And why? Because birds can't fly over this high mountain range that kind of makes a U shape right here. And they don't fly over the sea unless they're migrants coming back home. And this is the Guajira Desert out here. So these birds have been trapped here and they've evolved here for a long time. And that's what makes the endemics. And as you can see, this mountain range is not part of the Andes. It's totally isolated from the Andes. Okay, and so once you figure out where you're going, you have to figure out who you're going with. And I was hanging out with my friend Magnus one day, and I was telling him that my son had told me about this place in Colombia called Santa Marta, and he knew about it. And he basically said, "When we going?" And I said, "As soon as possible." And so we talked our wives into joining us. And so we went about planning this trip. And the first thing you got to do when you plan a trip is figure out what kind of guide you're going to get. And usually whenever I go to a country and I'm not actually going with a guided tour, we're kind of doing our own thing. I look on eBird and I find out who is the top birder in the area. So in Colombia, Pablo Flores of Multicolored Birding has 1783. It's close, 1782. Okay, it might have changed, but anyway, I got a hold of Pablo and we decided to go with Pablo because he literally wrote the book on bird watching in Colombia. He's, as I said, the #1 birder. He owns his own guiding service, and he's the co-founder of this great organization, Pro Aves, which you'll see they're doing something very similar to what Lane County Audubon Society is doing with children. Let's see. And so Pro Aves was founded by Pablo and some other ornithologists. And it started with the protection of the yellow-eared parrot in 1998 and expanded into other areas. And now they have 28 nature reserves in Colombia. And we visited 3 of them. And they are remarkable, as you'll see tonight. But I'd like to share with you a little more about crow so I put together a video collage that kind of tells you what they're about. And if you're feeling generous at the end of the year, you can go to their website and make a donation because they do great work. There is sound to this. Is there sound? Well, there was sound. So these kids, they paint murals around town and they bring the, you know, the people's interest and get them interested in these wax palms, which are very vital to the yellow-eared parrot. They nest in the dead wax palms. And these wax palms are very unique. There's no palms like them in the world. They use the wax to make candles locally. It grows up to 60 meters high. They're very rare because they're a high altitude palm. This right here was, well, where we were seeing them was, you know, 6,000 to 7,000 feet. And they grow up actually higher than that. They're an umbrella species. And unfortunately, their shade they depend on shade, and as you can see, there wasn't much shade there. And here's the actual parrots themselves. There we go. Okay, did we see them? Stay tuned. Okay, getting ready to go and learning the birds. That's what I like to do before I go to some place. I like to be familiar with at least the common birds. And so I have this system that I go about and I use eBird. How many people know about eBird out there? Okay, just about everybody. This is an amazing resource where you can go and you can find out exactly what birds are common in an exact location. And you can kind of study them. You can study their calls. You can see videos of them. It's really an excellent resource. I also go to wings and tropical birding tours where you can read trip reports from all over the world. And you can get an idea of where these companies go, what they see, how they see it, and just kind of things like that. So you kind of get an idea of what they're doing. Also, YouTube is a good resource. So here's the good part. Where do we go? What do we do? And what do we see? Well, we started off in Santa Marta. It's one of the oldest cities in the Western Hemisphere. And we walked around the city all day. The tour didn't start until the next day. So we got a chance to enjoy this colonial city, and we went out to lunch and had the best baba ganoush I've ever had. Imagine that. It was really funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, Nolan Clemens, and I was talking to him about his trip to baba ganoush, and I told him about, I was talking to him about his trip to Panama, and I told him that we had the best baba ganoush, and he said, "Oh, me too, but I had it in Panama City." So that was kind of weird. But anyway, Magnus and I took a walk around this hot spot that was in the center of the city, and we got great looks at this yellow-headed caracara. And this turned out to be one of the more common birds that we saw, this woodpecker. But the best bird of the day was this russet-throated puffbird. This was a real nice find there in the city, and lifer number 1. The next day was the first day of the actual tour, and we started off here in Santa Marta, went up this road to this El Dorado Pro Aves Reserve. But that doesn't really give you the feel of what we did. So we're going to take a little ride with Angel Ortiz. He was our guide. We met him at a supermarket, and we had a driver, and we were in a Land Rover, and he was on a motorcycle, and we followed him out of the city. So let's get going. We're trying to keep up with him. We're out through the suburbs, going along out into the countryside. We finally get up into the mountains and stop for a nice breakfast at a roadside cafe. Do a little birding on the way up until we finally land at this beautiful lodge, the Pro Aves Reserve. This was a beautiful, beautiful location. And this reserve holds 379 species. And a lot of them are North American migrants that depend upon this area in particular, with 70 endemic species and subspecies. One is critically endangered, the Santa Marta saberwing, which we did not see. And this is where we stayed. We stayed up here, right in that cabin right there. And these are kind of modeled off the native people in the way that they built houses. This is our dining hall. And this is out on the deck where we watch the sunset, and we were under the influence. And Magnus and I were walking up a trail, and we saw this cinnamon flycatcher who had a nest with 1 egg nearby. It's a nice find. And around the lodge itself, at the feeders, there were lots of crowned wood nymphs, as well as masked trogon, which is one of the more common trogons in South America, but very beautiful. And then Magnus got this great shot of this fan-tailed guan. This is such an incredible photograph. And just so I don't try to take credit for Magnus's photography, I put his initials down here in the bottom, and mine are on down there. So if you see FT, that's me, MP, that's Magnus. But this is a great photograph, fan-tailed guan. And I just wanted to share with you real fast, I'm not going to read them off, but these are all the endemic species that we saw, not all of them, but some of them while we were on our way up the mountain. We didn't get photographs of them, so I just thought I'd grab these off eBird, just so you have an idea of what these birds look like. But the incredible thing about seeing an endemic for me is to look at this bird and know that this is the only place in the world it's found. It's such a small home range. Some of these home ranges are like the size of, much smaller than Lane County, like half of Lane County. So it's just incredible to see these birds and know that you can't go anywhere else in the world to see these times. We went out at night and we saw a night monkey, as well as a Santa Marta screech owl. Not great looks at the screech owl. I think Rosie had a good look at it, but I think she was the only one. But I did see it fly by, so. And then here's the trip tally so far after 2 days. I have 82 species with 20 lifers. March 3rd, we went up higher up in the mountains around 9,000 feet, and we took this road that was like a dry creek bed. I mean, some of the places you were going on this road, it was like going up a waterfall without the water. It was about 7 miles, took us about an hour and a half. But what's funny is you can see how rocky the road is right there. I looked over my shoulder, and Angel, our guide, who has 2 children, one of them sick, was sound asleep. This is what it looks like up there. It's very short, scrubby, sort of like polylepis. And there are chiggers. Okay. Out here is looking at the Cologne Peak and Bolivar. And if you turn around and look the other way, you see the city of Santa Marta and the Caribbean. But you guys didn't come here to see that, you came here to see birds, and birds we shall talk about now. We have the Santa Marta ant pitta there, which there was a feeding station behind this little ranger station. And the ranger was throwing out some worms, and this ant pitta had become habituated to that. And so he called us over, and sure enough, this ant pitta came out, Santa Marta ant pitta, an endemic. And getting in on the fun was a slaty-backed nightingale thrush, as well as a golden-crowned redstart. And then this is another nice shot of Magnus's, the flamulated tree runner. I've been wanting to photograph this bird for a long time, and this is quite a feat because these guys are really shy, and it's hard to get close to them. So good job. This is a scarlet-fronted parakeet, one of the threatened species that are on the reserve. And this is a plus cap. This is a bird that I've wanted to see for so long, and I finally saw it. This was my lifer bird. And I thought I was going to miss it because I was off looking at some fly or spider or something like that whenever the group found it. And I come running up, and hopefully, I mean, it did stick around. I was able to get this photograph of it and see it real well. White-tipped quetzal is a near endemic. Front and back poses. Okay, these next 3 days we're going to spend here at the El Dorado Lodge between there and Minca and just cover all this area in here. So all the birds you see from the next 3 days are going to be all in this area in here. And we have a new guide, I didn't tell you, and we only found out the night before that we were having a new guide, and it turned out really well. David Fanal, he was phenomenal. He, his knowledge of the plants and the frogs and the insects and the birds was just great. And here he is sharing with us some story about a plant, which is, I'm sure, very interesting. And then my wife Miriam found this nest of this white-tipped quetzal. And it's interesting that these chicks go from bare skin directly to feathers without any downy stage. And that's because the temperature is pretty much constant in this area. This was one of my most wanted photographed birds. I made out a little list of birds that I wanted to photograph in Colombia. And this guy was number 4 on the list. So I was really happy to get this photograph, and I told David about the list, and I should say David, about the list. And the number 1 bird on the list was a blue-naped chlorofonia. And he took me to the feeders the night before, and he said, oh, they always come down here to the feeders. Well, they didn't come that night. They came down, but they stayed up into the trees, so I didn't get my bird. But I did. Because we were, later on that day, we found the nest, and I was watching these scarlet-fronted parakeets when David came over and yanked me by the arm and pulled me over to where this these two birds were, a male and a female. Here's the male. Oh, but it gets better because there were chicks. And if you're a parent, you know a thing or two about unconditional love. And we're going to see some unconditional love right here. He says, feed me. He says, well, we got to clean up first. Turns around and we clean up. Now that's unconditional love, no? We were at this little lodge that had a nice garden, and we hung out there for a while, and we saw these lesser violet ears. But that's not all. We saw the cousin, the brown violet ear, and the rusty flower piercer, and a buff-throated saltator. Very nice gardens. I recommend you stay at that place. Later on, we were doing a little hike, and I found an ant swarm. And this guy was so involved in the ant swarm that he let me approach him pretty close. And so I was able to get a nice photograph of this yellow-legged thrush. Then we headed back into town, and this is our hotel, the Sweet Harmony Hotel, and those are actual rooms right there. And later on, you can walk down to the river, just a hop, skip, and a jump. And then later on, we walked into town and met David and his 3 dogs, and we went into a restaurant with the 3 dogs, and the 3 dogs sat at the table with us, well, on the floor, and we had a really nice dinner. It was, I'm not kidding, I had the best baba ganoush. Well, this is the best stir fry I've ever had. And it was amazing. And to have it in the mountains of Colombia was even more amazing. Fresh vegetables, it was so good. But David, believe it or not, told us that tomorrow we're getting up at 4:30 to go out to this military macaw flyout, and we were going to have another guide, that he had something to do the next day. And we were kind of like, oh, okay. And so we better get back to the hotel so we can get some shut-eye. Well, little did we know that when we got back to the hotel, it was right next to an outdoor karaoke bar.
Things will be great when you're down.
Okay, you get the picture, right? Got to get up at 4:30. Well, luckily they knocked off around 10 or so it wasn't so bad. And our new guide turned out to be another great guy. We really had a really fun day with him. His name is Saddam Rocio Parra, and he was a great guy. He was just teaching high school, I think a couple of weeks before he showed up to guide us, but he came back to Minka to be near his girlfriend and daughter. And he had a lot of good stories to tell about his daughter. Blue Dacnus was one of the birds that day that we saw, as well as white-vented plumletier. And now the tally is 182 species with 48 lifers. Excuse me for 1 minute. This is kind of cool about eBird is that you can do these trip reports and get a total records of your trip, and people can actually follow along with them if they're so inclined. We went to Tayrona National Park where we saw howler monkeys. How many have ever heard howler monkeys in the jungle? Nothing like it, huh? Especially the first time. We also saw Amazon kingfisher, and it's that bird aptly named or not, white-bearded mannequin. As well as this guy, spectacled caiman. This was just a little bitty guy, probably about, I don't know, maybe a foot long. And Mama was right there with him. And speaking of birds that are appropriately named, southern bentbill, you can see, he was intent on catching flies, and we got so close to him, and he didn't care. Same thing with these rufous-tailed jacamars. They were so intent on feeding that they didn't care that we were close by. And it's so cool to see these green iguanas climbing through the trees. Okay, that was at Parque Nacional Tayrona. And now we're going to be traveling over here to the Guajira Peninsula. Okay? And believe it or not, things are going well right here. Traffic's moving right along. I kid you not. I just kind of wanted to stay on this for just a minute, just to kind of give you guys a feel of what it's like to travel and see what life is like there. You can see coming up here on the right, we have our dogs, right? Just hanging out. And then what's interesting about Colombia and other places like this is the motorcycle activity, where no one's late if they've got a motorcycle, because they just go around, down the center, all kinds of, it's like rules don't apply. But I say that things were going well here because probably about 40 or 50 miles up the road, we came to a complete standstill. Nothing was moving. So we were just thinking, oh, probably be a little wreck or something like that. It'll be going in 15 minutes or so. But it wasn't going in 15 minutes. And so we asked David, what's going on here? And he went out and talked to some people, came back about 15 or 20 minutes later, and he said that the farmers are not liking the government's policy, the agricultural policy, and so they've taken their tractors and they've driven them out on the road and blocked the road in both directions. And I was like, well, can they do that? And he was like, yeah, they can do that. And I looked around me and people are just having a good time. They're all parked in the cars and they're out of their cars and talking, and there's people walking up and down selling soft drinks and bananas and mangoes and everything. And so it's just like, okay, we're here to have a good time, right? So we had a good time for a couple hours there. And we finally got going and made it to our stop in the dark, but that was fun. And our next stop was La Guajira, which has the Caribbean on one side and the desert on the other. And this is a very special habitat. This is another one of Magnus's shots, the Orinocan saltator. Another one of his shots, the Buffy hummingbird. Both of those, well, the saltator's near endemic, but this one is a true endemic, the Buffy hummingbird. And then this is one of my favorite shots, although I'm probably going to say that about the next one that Magnus got. Beautiful pearly vented toady tyrant. And this is my favorite, beautiful vermilion cardinal, which was number 2 on my list, and I got it. This is a really nice day. I was looking for this cardinal. I wanted to photograph it. And along the way, I found other birds, of course. And these bicolored wrens are really cool wrens. It seems to me like in the bird world, like wrens have a great personality. And these wrens are no exception. And they nest in family groups. And so you would see one of these wrens fly over to a tree and it'd be greeted by two others, and pretty soon there's like 5 or 6 wrens all in the same place. It was really cool to see that. And up here is a northern white-fringed antbird, which if you want to get a photograph of that, you're going to have to crawl under bushes and things like that, because they are very secretive and very active. But not this bird, because our guide put some corn down on this cactus and he came right in. So that was easy. We did see ferruginous pygmy owl and another vermilion bird, vermilion flycatcher, and we saw a cattle tyrant, and we didn't have to go to Texas to see it. That's an inside joke. Southern lapwing, we stopped at this farmer's field, and this next bird, listen to the dove that's calling in the background and shouting out at people. Anybody know it? No? Scaled dove. And then these two lovebirds, crested caracara, on Valentine's Day. Okay, now we're ready for our next stop. I've got to check on my time here, see how I'm doing. So we got up and we went down the highway. We checked in at a guard station here. We drove on a very rough and rocky road and sandy all the way out here, where we met our boatman. And the night before, I was talking to this lady at the lodge, and she was telling me, oh, we went out on this sailboat. It was so cool. And we saw the flamingos. And I'm thinking, wow, cool. I didn't know we were going to be on a sailboat. That's really cool. And so I'm thinking, this is going to be cool. Maybe they have gin and tonics. So this is what I thought we were on. And this is what we actually ended up on. But it was fantastic. We didn't need any fancy sailboat because we had a great captain. And he pulled us across this lagoon. This lagoon, I don't know if it's muddy or not, but if it's not muddy, you could walk across it. But there was no wind, so he had to pull us the whole way. It was probably, I'm guessing, a mile or maybe a little over that. What do you think, Magnus? Mile and a half. He pulled us all the way there, where we saw this. And this is fantastic. This just blew me away. In fact, so much so that Magnus was trying to get my attention, and he was calling me and calling me, but I didn't answer. Not in time, at least. He kept saying, Ibis, Ibis, over here, Ibis. Well, Scarlet Ibis was my third most wanted photographed bird. And that's why he was talking to me. And I said, well, why didn't you say something? But Magnus got this great shot. His was better than mine, so I wanted to share that with you. I think this bird isn't a full adult. I think it's a juvenile bird. Okay, so the trip tally, time to check in, 282 species, and for me, 71 lifers. So it's been a really good trip. But it's time to get on a plane. And we got on a plane in Rio Hacha. We took off and we flew straight direction for Medellin. And we flew over the Santa Marta Range, which was beautiful. Then you see these greenhouses coming into Medellin, giant greenhouses. And this is the city of Medellin, which I was surprised. It's really a beautiful city. I wasn't expecting it to be so nice. But the next day we caught up with our guide, Diego Guerrero. And he was our guide the rest of the trip. He was actually supposed to be our guide the whole trip, but he came down with the flu just before we got there. And that's why there was a scramble and we had 3 other guides, which turned out really great, actually. And in the morning, he's a paramedic And in the afternoon, he's an ultra marathoner. And then on the swing shift, he's a canyoneering instructor, and then moonlights as a tropical bird guide. But he also owns this company right here, so check him out. He was fantastic. He was top-notch birder, really fun to be around and hang out with, and he knew all the greatest places to eat. We took off from Medellin. He came down here to Bolombolo. I just like to say that. And we ended up in Ciudad Bolivar. And he had a stakeout of a spectacled owl. These are juveniles. So they just fledged. Then we got back in the car and we ended up at the second reserve that we've been to, the Pro Aves Reserve, the Las Tangaras. And this is the place where you hang out, and the garden's back there. This is where you sit and look at the birds and stuff like that. Really super nice place with great food, soup every night, fresh coffee in the morning. It's a great place to go. And these are the birds that we got just immediately after arriving. Silver-throated tanager taking a bath. Then I call this slide the study of yellow and black. You have a toady flycatcher, a yellow-backed oriole, and a thick-billed euphonia. And those were all in the garden just hanging out. And most of the time we spend up on the higher ridges, and this is looking out at the Andes Mountains to the east, but we stayed in this other range that was more coastal. Still, it's about 6,000 feet there. And Magnus and I went to this little hummingbird spot up there. We saw a tourmaline sun angel named after the mineral, and Empress Brilliant named after the Empress. I just love the names of hummingbirds, you know, Sun Angel, Brilliant, Emerald, they have such great names. Magnus got this nice shot of a saffron crown tanager. And I found a velvet purple coronet hiding in the shadows with just a little light coming through. And one of my favorite things about traveling in the tropics are oropendolas. And we found these nests right next to this waterfall. They're calling, but you can't hear them because the waterfall is pretty loud. Little stool, another really social bird with a lot of personality. This ornate flycatcher was hanging out by the stream side as well. And blue-winged mountain tanager up higher. And Diego's always Johnny on the spot. Every place we went, he had coffee and hot chocolate, and he knew that I liked half and half. So he had the answer. Now, on this day, we went up into this area. We had been down in this area the day before, but now we're going to be traveling up in here. And this is a little bit higher. And up there, we have this dusky pia. And I don't know if you can see it or not. Let's get a little closer and look at what he's eating. We stayed there for at least 10 minutes, if not more, and he never made any progress on this thing. It's like he was smoking a cigar or something. And then back in the garden, we had violet-tailed sylph, collared incas, Steely Dan hummingbird, Steely Dan's it. And this is one, I say this every time, but this is another one of Mark Photography specials. A beautiful white booted racket tail, just magnificent. Now, I've talked to you a lot about birds, but ever since I met Neil Borkland, Magnus Bursmark, John Sullivan, I've been getting more and more into butterflies and insects, and that's why I missed about 4 or 5 lifers. But I did get this, and I wanted to share it with you, and I'm just gonna let it run. Thank you. And thanks to Magnus and John and Neil for inspiring me to get into insects and look down every once in a while. I'm going to speed up the program a little bit because I see that I'm running close to time here. So today we're going from the Tongadas down to Jardín. And Jardín's a nice little mountain town, a coffee mountain town. It's just gorgeous. And something must be happening on this bridge. Why are we standing out on this bridge? What is Rosie looking at? She's looking at a bat falcon. And this was quite a fun. I was super excited to see this bird up close like this. But I don't think they should call him a bat falcon. How about a cicada falcon? That's what he was eating. I don't know about this bat business. This is the central square there in Jardín, a beautiful city. And if you're a dog, you gotta love it. And if you're a horse, well, you know the traffic rules. Stop at the intersection. And go. And this is Diego carrying a scope right there. Why is he carrying the scope? Because just down the hill, we walked and there was a cock of the rock lek. And we got really nice looks, obviously, at this cock of the rock. And Magnus got a really interesting pose on this one. Which way is up, huh? Incredible. And this is what it sounds like there. Cool place. Okay, our final day, or it was our final day, Miriam and I, Rosie and Magnus went on and they ventured south and had more fun. But this was the third reserve that we visited, the yellow-eared parrot reserve. And that's the best photographs I got of those parrots. They were just flying over and I said, well, you gotta take what you can get. So that's what I got. And this is actually a photograph that I took from a different trip. We didn't get to see the owl this well, but I kind of wanted you guys to see what these owls look like. They're just beautiful, and how Diego found it, I'll never know. It was amazing. And we visited Lucia. Lucia lives in a house up the mountain, and she hosts a lot of bird watchers, and you can see she makes a magnificent breakfast, and she made us lunch as well later on. And this is a beautiful dog that was along the road that I couldn't resist photographing.
He was nice.
Yeah, he was a beautiful dog. But her son, Martin, he has trained these ant pittas to come in whenever he whistles, and he gives them rewards in the form of worms. And here he is taking some worms out, and you're going to see a willing participant pop out. And he's going to fly over, spoiler, he's going to fly away. But this is what he looks like. This is the actual bird that we saw, and that's what he sounds like. And he has another friend, Martin has a friend over here, which is a chami ant pitta. And that bird actually flew out, landed on his hand, took a worm, and took off. Later on, back at the ranch, we had a wonderful trout for lunch, and afterwards, everyone got to wear Lucia's apron. Around the yard, we have some nice birds like this buff-tailed cornet, this glossy-backed thrush, and this gray-browed brush finch. And while I was there, this short-tailed hawk flew over. Now this next thing that you're going to see was perhaps one of the most special things about the trip. And what I'd like to do is just to let the photograph tell the story itself.
No.
Those are all names used in various places. Beautiful animal, huh? Just amazing. It's interesting that the kittens do not take solid food until they're 36 to 58 days old. They don't even open their eyes until 8 to 17 days, which is very unusual for a cat of that size. They don't reach maturity until 2.5 years. And they have an average lifespan of about 11 years in the wild. Now you may have some questions about this cat, this beautiful cat that visited Lucia. And he comes now and then, and she had a photograph of it, and I said, is this cat here? And she said, oh, hardly ever. Sometimes it shows up. Most of the time it's not. And Magnus and Lucia and I were in the back, and we were kind of looking at some hummingbirds, and I turned around and that cat was right there. And I was like, Magnus and Lucia were kind of involved in a conversation. I didn't want to yell or anything like that, so I kept going, hey, you guys, hey, you guys, hey, you guys. And they were really involved. And it took me a little while to get their attention. But when they did, if you could see the look on their faces, it was amazing. So I've shared with you a lot of visuals about Colombia. What I'd like to do now is share with you the sounds of Colombia, because there's nothing like being in a cloud forest. And, oh, I got a little ahead of myself. We got to do the math first, right? 437 species for the trip and 104 lifers. Okay, now, so I want to share with you the sounds of the cloud forest. And again, this is going to be one that I'm just going to let the images and the sounds speak for themselves, but I'll just say that I love the wrens of South America. Well, thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That was incredible. That was just fantastic. I knew this was gonna be good too. It was better than I even imagined. It was really good. Really talented guy. Let's give him another great round of applause. We don't have a lot of time, but if you do have let's take maybe at least two questions if anybody has any.
What were those little things they were wearing? on their desks. That guides that were around.
Speaker.
Oh, it was a speaker to call in the bird.
A question about what the guides were wearing, it was, yeah, it was a speaker that magnifies the sounds, and they have them on their phones, and yeah, Bluetooth speaker. Neil,
Pablo Flores. What's that?
what happened to Pablo Flores is the question.
What happened to him?
Yeah, you never mentioned it now, we're saying.
Oh, he's just the owner of the company. He didn't actually do the guide. He arranged the trips and got the guides and stuff like that. But we did have dinner with him. He's a very nice guy. And we had dinner with him in Medellin, and he was a really nice guy. I highly recommend his company.
Okay, one more, Barbara.
Did you guys speak English?
Yes, they all did. Yeah, they all spoke English.
The guide spoke English. Okay, all right, we're running a little bit late, which was fine with me. I'm not worried about that. But we will need some help putting the chairs away. There are some racks that are in the back cabinet, and we only put 8 on a rack. Don't put any more than 8 on a rack. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you again, Forest, for delighting us tonight. It was really good.